Galena, Illinois has about 3,400 people. Its main street has a 5-story hotel, gaslit lampposts, and Victorian mansions built to hold 4 times that many people. Something doesn't add up here, and the real answer is stranger than you'd guess. For about 30 years in the 1800s, this river town in the far corner of Illinois outshipped, outproduced, and outgrew a city you already know extremely well. That city was Chicago. And what happened to Galena next is exactly why its streets still look the way they did 170 years ago. America's first mineral rush. Before there was a United States, there was lead in these hills, and people already knew exactly where to find it. The Sauk and Meskwaki, whom French traders called the Fox, along with the Ho-Chunk, had been digging surface deposits of Galena ore out of this stretch of the Mississippi River Valley for centuries, mostly for body paint and trade with neighboring tribes. French traders picked up on the deposits as early as the late 1600s. A French map from 1703 marks the region plainly as mines de plomb, lead mines. By 1788, a French-Canadian trader named Julien Dubec had struck an agreement to work mines just across the river, shipping lead downriver decades before Illinois was even a state. Then, in 1807, the United States Congress formally created a federal lead mining district here, and the real rush began. On September 30, 1822, the government issued its first official mining lease in the region to Richard M. Johnson. He'd later become the 9th Vice President of the United States under Martin Van Buren. Along with Johnson's lease came something you don't usually associate with a mining permit: armed soldiers sent to guard his claim against the Fox Nation, whose land this had always been. That single detail tells you everything about how this boom actually got started. What followed looked like a dress rehearsal for the California gold rush that would arrive decades later. Steamboats crowded up the Mississippi loaded with prospectors, drifters, and fortune seekers hoping to strike it rich in lead instead of gold. Historians actually call it the lead rush, and it holds a real distinction: the first major mineral rush in American history. In 1823, a physician named Moses Meeker brought 43 new settlers into the area. Within months, he took account: 74 men, women, and children living alongside roughly 500 Native Americans he didn't bother to count individually. That's not a rounding error. It's a preview of exactly what was coming for the people who had worked this land first. From there, the boom accelerated fast. Between 1825 and 1828 alone, the region shipped 21 million pounds of lead down the river, and the local population exploded from around 200 people to somewhere near 10,000. By 1845, the numbers hit their absolute peak. The mines around Galena were producing about 83% of all the lead mined in the entire United States that year. 83%. One small river town in the corner of Illinois was single-handedly arming the country's bullets, pipes, paint, and window glass. And all that lead money had to go somewhere. It went into building one of the most improbable boomtowns the Midwest has ever produced, and for a little while, it made a much more famous Illinois city look like an afterthought. Quick pause before we get into exactly how big Galena got. If you're into deep dives on forgotten American towns like this one, subscribing helps a ton, and there's more of this coming. Now, back to Galena at its peak. The city that beat Chicago. By 1828, Galena's population was estimated at around 10,000 people, putting it on par with, or flat out ahead of, a settlement about 150 miles east called Chicago. That's not exaggeration. Multiple historical accounts describe Galena rivaling or surpassing Chicago's population through the late 1820s and into the 1830s, back when Chicago was still, in the words of one Illinois historian, a swamp village. Galena had wealth, infrastructure, and momentum. Chicago had mud streets and a fort. Walk through Galena during its peak years and you wouldn't recognize the quiet tourist stop it is today. Water Street, right along the river, regularly held as many as 15 steamboats docked at once, loading and unloading lead, supplies, and passengers headed for St. Louis, New Orleans, and the new Minnesota territory further upriver. The streets themselves were lit by gas lamps, a real luxury for a frontier town in the 1840s and 50s. Wealthy mine owners and merchants built ornate Victorian mansions up on Prospect Street and the surrounding hillsides, the kind of homes you'd expect in an established eastern city, not a scrappy lead mining outpost on the Mississippi. In 1855, the town opened the DeSoto House Hotel, a 5-story, 240-room building billed at the time as the largest hotel in the American West. It quickly became more than just a place to sleep. It became the political stage for the entire region. Abraham Lincoln spoke from its second-floor balcony in July of 1856, campaigning for John Fremont, the first presidential candidate the brand-new Republican Party ever ran. 2 years later, on July 25, 1858, his rival Stephen Douglas stood on that exact same balcony and delivered his own speech, just days after the first of their famous Lincoln-Douglas debates in nearby Ottawa. A town of a few thousand people, one that barely shows up on most maps today, had real national political weight. And then, there's Ulysses S. Grant. Grant arrived in Galena in April of 1860, stepping off the steamboat Itasca with his wife Julia and their 4 children. He was not arriving as a hero. He was arriving because he needed a job. He'd already resigned from the army once under a cloud of rumors about drinking. He'd failed at farming. He'd failed at real estate. Now, at 38 years old, he was coming to clerk in his father's leather goods store on Main Street for about $600 a year. His father reportedly didn't soften the blow, telling his son flatly that he hoped Grant would do better in the store than he had done everywhere else in life. Grant settled into a quiet routine, walking down more than 200 wooden steps from his rented home on High Street to the shop each morning, then buying hides and selling leather goods across the tri-state area. Then, on April 15, 1861, news reached Galena that Fort Sumter had fallen and the Civil War had begun. The town's businesses closed, a crowd gathered at the DeSoto House Hotel, and a local attorney named John Rollins gave a speech so fiery that Grant later said in his own words it had stirred his patriotism. Within days, Grant was helping organize a company of local volunteers. He would never work in that leather shop again. What followed is one of the wildest turnarounds in American history. The failed clerk from a nowhere Illinois river town went on to command the entire Union Army and accept Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox. When Grant came home to Galena on August 18, 1865, roughly 25,000 people, more than triple the town's entire population, lined the streets to welcome him. Grateful citizens raised around $16,000 to buy and fully furnish a home for him as a thank you gift. 3 years later, Grant ran his presidential campaign out of rooms 209 and 211 of that very same DeSoto House Hotel where Lincoln and Douglas had once stood on the balcony. He went on to become the 18th President of the United States. Grant wasn't even Galena's only general. This one town sent 9 local men into the Union Army who came home as generals, a fact still commemorated on the city's flag today. For a town this size, that's an unbelievable concentration of American history stacked onto one stretch of riverfront. But every boomtown eventually meets its ceiling, and Galena's arrived faster and from more directions than anyone in town could have expected. When everything turned at once. The first blow came from somewhere else entirely. In 1848 and 1849, gold was discovered in California, and the news tore through mining communities all across the country, Galena included. Miners who had spent years digging lead out of Illinois hillsides packed up and headed west, chasing a bigger, shinier fortune. Contemporary accounts say a large share of the region's miners left within a year or two, pulled away just as Galena's own lead production was starting to level off. The timing could not have been worse. Lead mining around Galena had peaked in 1845, and by the late 1840s, the easiest, shallowest deposits were running out. What remained required deeper, more expensive operations that fewer people had the capital or patience to pursue. There was a brief second wind during the Civil War, when lead prices jumped from around $20 to $32 per thousand pounds thanks to booming demand for ammunition, and mines around Galena ramped production back up, but that demand faded fast once the war ended, and lead mining in the area never fully recovered, though nearby zinc mining kept a smaller version of the industry alive for decades, with one more brief boost from both world wars. Then came the quieter, more permanent problem, the one nobody could simply mine or fight their way out of. Decades of clear-cutting hillsides from mining and farming had stripped away the vegetation holding the soil in place, and all that loose dirt washed straight into the Galena River, a river that was once nearly 300 feet wide enough to comfortably dock steamboats, slowly filled in with silt until it could no longer support the vessels that had built the town's entire economy. Engineers tried dredging it. A lock and dam system went in at one point. None of it was enough. Today, that same river carries only shallow, small watercraft, a permanent physical reminder of what Galena lost. And then, as if to slam the door shut for good, the railroads chose somewhere else to go entirely. As rail lines began crisscrossing Illinois in the 1850s, Galena's own steamboat owners, still confident that river trade would outlast this new technology, resisted early railroad proposals through town. It was a bet that did not pay off. The Galena and Chicago Union Railroad's main line never actually reached Galena at all. It ran instead through flatter, easier terrain toward Freeport and separately toward routes that would eventually feed into the first transcontinental railroad in 1869. Chicago, the same city Galena had once outgrown, became the railroad hub of the entire Midwest instead. Galena turned into a place trains passed near, not through. Take away the steamboats, the lead, and the railroad within the space of about 2 decades, and you get exactly what happened next: a long, slow, permanent exodus. The town time forgot on purpose. Galena's population, which had peaked somewhere around 12,000 to 14,000 people in the 1850s, began a long and steady collapse. By 1900, the town had shrunk to just over 5,000 residents. The decline continued for decades, eventually leveling off at the roughly 3,400 to 3,600 people who call Galena home today, a population that has barely budged in generations. Here's the twist that makes this whole story worth telling. Because Galena's economy never fully recovered, the town never had the money to tear down its old buildings and replace them with something newer. Other American cities spent the 20th century bulldozing their Victorian downtowns to make room for parking lots, office towers, and modern storefronts. Galena simply could not afford to. The town's poverty, in a strange twist, became its preservation plan. By the 1950s and 60s, much of downtown Galena sat run down, filled with aging taverns and half-empty storefronts. In 1970, a local proposal actually called for tearing down 22 of those old downtown buildings to make way for something modern. Residents pushed back hard and voted the plan down, choosing instead to slowly restore what was left rather than replace it. That decision, made by a shrinking town with barely any economic leverage left, is a big part of why Galena still looks the way it does now. Today, close to 85% of Galena's buildings sit inside a National Register historic district, and more than 1,000 of them date to before 1900. The DeSoto House Hotel is still open, still welcoming guests on the same block where Lincoln and Douglas once gave speeches from the balcony above the street. The Prospect Street mansions still line the hillside. Grant's home, gifted to him by grateful neighbors back in 1865, is now a state historic site anyone can walk through. Floodgates and a levee system, installed in 1950 after a devastating flood in 1937, still protect the entire downtown from the same river that once silted itself into irrelevance. Over 1 million tourists now visit Galena every single year, making it, by most tourism measures, the second most visited destination in the entire state of Illinois, right behind Chicago. What time left behind? Galena never got the chance to keep up. The mines ran dry, the river filled in, and the railroad built its future through the very city Galena had once outgrown without a second thought. By any conventional measure, that makes Galena a failure story, a place that lost the race it once seemed destined to win. Except, failing to modernize is exactly what saved it. While Chicago tore itself down and rebuilt itself into a modern American giant over and over for a century and a half, Galena simply stayed still. Not by choice at first, and later very much by choice. Its gaslit streets, its 5-story hotel, its hillside mansions built for a much bigger city. All of it survived because nobody ever had the money or the momentum to erase it. So maybe that is the real question this town leaves behind. Somewhere out there is a version of Chicago that never tore down its 1850s Main Street, never let its river choke on its own silt, never watched its railroad get built somewhere else. That version is still standing right now, in brick and gaslight, in a valley in the far northwest corner of Illinois. What does a town look like when time simply chooses not to? If you want to keep finding places like this one, subscribe, because there are a lot more of them still waiting to be found.